the mountains of Zion. For there the Lord commanded the blessing, even life forevermore.
In the past 3 messages, we have only seen the principles concerning oneness. From tonight, we have to spend more time in the details. The first of the details is fully, even more than fully, revealed in Deuteronomy. In these few chapters, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. In all these 4 chapters, actually, you don't need to include chapter 13. Just 12, 14, 15, 16. In these 4 chapters, the one place, or the place, has been mentioned. If you count, you'll find out altogether 16 times. The place, the unique place, the one place, the only place, the place, together, altogether 16 times. So, as it is so important, so much stressed again and again, even 16 times, surely we have to spend some time to get into it. Deuteronomy, firstly, we all have to know, is a book of how to enjoy the riches of the good land, flowing with milk and honey. Deuteronomy, as the last book of Moses, was given at the time when the children of Israel had come to the border of the good land. In front of them was the rich land. And they, by that time, were ready, and they were charged by God to enter in and to dispossess and possess it for their enjoyment. Before entering into that good land, Moses, as a father, so aged, so concerned about their entering into the good land, rather their enjoying of the good land. Moses was so concerned for this matter, so Moses spent such a long time to give them this book of Deuteronomy. If you read through this book, you can realize this book is just the word out of a very aged, loving father concerning their children's future, concerning his children's future, concerning his children's enjoyment. In this charge, in this concern, when he comes to chapter 12, he opened up God's heart to them by presenting one thing to them in this way. In what way? We have to take care of the first few verses. The first few verses says, you have to observe these statutes all the days when you live upon the earth. What statutes? Then Moses went on to say, when you enter that good land, before you enjoy anything, before you partake of the riches of that good land, you have to do one thing. That is to utterly destroy all the places of worships, all the places of the heathen, pagan worships. You have to destroy, wherein the nations which ye shall dispossess served their gods. In other words, all the heathen places for their worships to the idols, you have to destroy. All the worship centers, all the places of the idol worships, these places you have to destroy. Where are they? Upon the high mountains, and upon the hills, and under every green tree. I don't like to spend too much time to get into it. The mountains, the hills, and the green trees are all meaningful. The idol worships were either on the high mountain or the hills or under the green trees. All these places you have to destroy. Then you have to overthrow their altars and break their dedicated pillars. Every pillar was dedicated to certain idol. In other words, to a certain demon. And burn their wooden symbols. Some trees were made symbols. Some may say symbols of a female deity. But anyhow, no doubt, symbols of demons, symbols of idols with fire. And ye shall hew down the graven images of their gods and destroy the names of them out of that place. Three things. The places you have to destroy. Two, all the idols, images, dedicated things, symbols. These are the symbols of the idols. You have either to hew down or to burn them. Then also, number three, you have to destroy the names. All the names of the idols you have to destroy. In other words, you have to clear up the good land, which you have to clear up with the good land with fire, to burn them out. That means all the heathen worship centers have to be destroyed. Then verse 4 says, ye shall not do so unto the Lord your God. That means you shouldn't worship God in that way. You shouldn't do as what the heathens, nations do to their gods. You shouldn't do it that way. So verse 5 has a big but. But into the place which the Lord your God shall choose out of all your tribes to put his name there, even unto his habitation shall ye seek, and thither thou shalt come. All the places you have to destroy. Only one place you have to go to. Have you seen this? All the places you have to destroy. Only one place you have to go to. And this one place is the place that God has chosen to put His name there. Then, because His name is just His person, as His name is there, His person is dwelling there. So that place spontaneously becomes God's dwelling place, God's habitation. You have to underline this two words, name and habitation. Before we go on, I like to point out, I would ask you not to think that I would go too far in what I'm going to tell you. Some people say we necessarily allegorize the Bible too much. Well, I hope that they could allegorize. Don't forget all the stories, all the things in the Old Testament, according to the basic principle of God's divine revelation, are types, are figures, are shadows. Am I right? All the stories, all the histories, all the things, all the matters, all the persons in the Old Testament are what? Types, figures, and shadows. If Deuteronomy 12 is just a kind of a statute to the children of Israel, it doesn't mean much to us. Then today we don't need this book. But this book is in the Holy Scriptures. Surely this book is written to us. We must get into the spiritual significance. And what is the spiritual significance? Let me say this. Before we came to Christ, before we came to the church, did we have much enjoyment of Christ? Have you ever heard even this kind of term, enjoyment of Christ? Enjoying Christ. I never heard. I only heard that Christ was my Savior, that Christ was the Son of God, that Christ was my Redeemer, and so forth. I never heard that Christ was my enjoyment. Even more, have you ever heard before you came into the church that Christ was typified by the good land? The good land was a full, a complete type of Christ. No argument. If anyone would argue with us, I would say you have to realize that with the history of the children of Israel, the first enjoyment they had before God was the Passover lamb. And the New Testament tells us clearly that the Passover lamb was Christ, was a type of Christ, in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7. And then following that, the children of Israel enjoyed manna in the wilderness for 40 years, and 1 Corinthians 10 tells us clearly the manna was also Christ. And all the Christians do realize that Christ is our daily manna. But very few Christians realize that following manna, good land is our enjoyment. Right? Joshua tells us that after the children of Israel entered into the good land, right away manna ceased. And what followed manna to support them as their daily food? The produce of the good land. Now you have to see as the Passover lamb and manna were all types of Christ being the enjoyment of God's people. Surely the good land with all its produce must be a type of our enjoyment. So there's no argument. Okay. Before we came to church, we never heard that Christ is enjoyable. And we never heard that Christ is our good land today. We never heard it. But rather, before we came to the church, I tell you, there was a kind of a situation full of high mountain worships, full of high hill worships, and full of worships under the green tree. A lot worship places, worship centers, and lots of idols. Some, I have to look to the Lord that He would cover us tonight with His prevailing blood. Because what we are speaking here is going to expose the demons. Some would say, Brother Lee, you shouldn't, in saying this, include so many churches, good quote. If you say that in the Catholic Church, cathedrals, there are idols, we admit. But we don't agree with you to say that in the churches there are idols. Have you heard the word here? Destroy the names. Destroy the names. Don't you realize every denomination has a name other than the name of Christ? Every denomination has a name other than the name of God. Lutheran. This bears the name of Luther. How about? I tell you, every name other than the name of Christ is an idol. Sometimes the denominations would argue, that is not an idol. We just use it as a kind of a sign. I tell you, every lady, right? Every lady knows the matter. For a lady to bear a man's name is terrible. If that man is not your husband. For a lady to bear a man's name who is not her husband is terrible. What is that? Fornication. Fornication. I don't have the time to allegorize all the things mentioned here. If we have the time, you could apply every bit that is mentioned here to today's situation. Right. Some you have to bury. Some you have to hew down. Some, you have to tear them. Just dedicated things. Dedicated things. Symbols. Idols. In today's Christianity, nearly everywhere is full of idols. In Los Angeles, you have a white memorial hospital. Do you know the word white there? Do you all know this? What, or why, the white is put there. To remember Mrs. White. That is a hospital as a memorial to the founder of the Seventh-day Adventist denomination. I'm afraid some of the young ones start to say, you don't know that. Do you know that? Huh? Don't you know that? See? So every day they are worshiping the idol. In so many chapels, you have some names there. This hall is called Hall of Dr. So-and-so. What are these? Idols. We don't have, and we shouldn't have, any name other than Jesus Christ, the Lord and the Son of God. We only have one name. We only remember one person. And the real memorial is the Lord's table. We don't remember anything, anyone. Am I right? But in today's Christianity, a lot of memorials. Am I right? I have too much to say. I just say this much. Good enough. Then, as you have come to the good land, what shall you do? What shall you do? You have to destroy all the places. Amen. Have you destroyed all the places? I must testify to you strongly. I have. I have done it. 46 years ago, in 1933, I have destroyed every place. I think you understand my language, don't you? Because the whole Christianity today is thickly clouded. It's thickly foggy, even smoggy. The Christians, the whole have been drugged. They don't have any sensation that those things are just idol worships. Many high mountains, high hills, many green trees in today's Christianity. And all these worships were adopted according to the hidden way. In universities, you have Hall of Dr. So-and-so, right? You have Hall of Dr. So-and-so. That's okay. That's the hidden way. In universities, the hidden way. It shouldn't be in the church. But all this has been adopted, has taken into the church. Not only Catholicism has adopted all the pagan things. You have to realize, you young people start to say this, you have to realize, I better ask you to buy that book, To Babylon, and read it. You have to realize Easter, Christmas, all the things, even the Christmas tree, Santa Claus, all the things are adopted from pagan worships. When we had the life study on Revelation, I told you already, Mr. Pember pointed out, even in the Catholic so-called saints, one was a Buddha. Many Buddhas, one was adopted into the Catholic Church and called him the saint. Not only the Catholic Church adopted all the pagan things, I tell you, even today, in many denominations, so many hidden things, pagan things, all have been brought into the so-called church. And today, what have we do? What have we to do? I tell you, we have to destroy all the places. To destroy every place. This is why there's no reconciliation between the law of recovery and today's denominations. Today's denominations are places, high mountains, high hills, green trees, where idols were worshipped and still are. So we have to be on the alert. We shouldn't set up a high mountain worship. We shouldn't set up a high hill worship. We shouldn't set up any worship under the rain. We have no mountain, no hill, no green tree. We only have Christ. We have no place but what? One, chosen by God. Now, we sure don't have the time to cover all these 4 chapters, 12, 14, 15, 16, but I'd like to pass on some crucial points to you. Based upon these 2 things. Number 1, we have destroyed all the places. And number 2, we have to go to that place, to the place, chosen by God. We have to destroy all the places. And we have to go to the place. I tell you, due to these 2 things, this chapter 12 of Deuteronomy, charges us with these few points. What few points? Number 1, we all have to learn how to fear God. How to have a fear of God. It is mentioned clearly in the same chapter. No, in chapter 14. Chapter 14 and verse 23. And thou shalt eat before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose to place his name there, the tithes of thy corn, of thy wine, and of thine oil, and the firstlings of thy herd and of thy flocks, that thou, listen, mayest learn to fear the Lord thy God always. Don't go to anywhere else. Don't go to any place but the place. But the place. I tell you, this is to fear God. To have freedom to choose worship center. This is not to fear God. This is to what? To indulge your lust. Let me say this. Look at today's Christianity. Sad to say, even among you, some before coming to the church life were what I call church's travelers. You have traveled. You have traveled. Last month, you were in that denomination. And this month, you are in this group. And next month, you may go to another one. Place to place, another place, another place. What is this? This is just indulgence of your flesh. The indulgence of your taste. No fear of God. If we do have the fear of God, we have to see that there's only one place, the place. The place. Later on we will see what is the place. How could we discern whether the place is the place? There are some principles. But anyhow, first of all, you have to see, God surely doesn't allow us to have any freedom to choose a place for our worship to Him. We must have a fear to Him. We must fear Him in this matter. We have no right. You don't have any right. If you have any right to choose a place, you are just following the heathen way. You are following the nations. But here in this chapter 12, Moses charged, rather God charged children of Israel through Moses that they have to destroy all the places. I tell you, brothers, after we all come to the church life, we have to destroy all the places. Have you destroyed? Amen. You have to see you have no freedom. You have no freedom to go here or there. You have no right to choose. The choice is up to Him. It is not your preference. If it is your preference, this is your indulgence. You are indulgent in your lust, in choosing a place. Sorry, I'm so strong. Just like a chaste, C-H-A-S-E, a chaste lady. A chaste lady has no right to go to anyone, to go to any man. You be careful. Only one man you have to go. Because that one man is chosen by God for you. If you go to any other one, that is what? Fornication. This is quite serious. Well, I'll just say this much. We all need to learn to fear the Lord our God. Always. Going to a place to meet with certain Christians, you have to fear God. God doesn't allow that. God charges us to destroy all the worship centers. And to go to the place. I say again, to destroy all the places and to go to the place. These two things need us, what? To fear God. And to learn to fear God always. Number one. Number two, I like this chapter. It says what? Don't do things which is right in your own eyes. Right in our own eyes. Anything that is right in our own eyes is terrible. Don't do things which is right in your own eyes. But today, we often heard Christians saying, I feel that's good. To me, that is right. What's wrong to me? There's nothing wrong. I feel good. I tell you, to see this way is to do things right in your own eyes. We must learn to do things that is right. Not only right, but also good in the eyes of God. Learn to do things not right in your own eyes. So what? So here in this chapter says, when you enter into the good land, you cannot eat your tithes wherever you see. Wherever you see. You see the high mountain, you see the high hill, you see the grain tree, you see a home, you see a school, you see a factory, you see a place. You have no right to worship God with your tithes wherever you see. If you do it, then you do it right in your own eyes. If you fear God, you will not do it right in your own eyes, but you will do things which are right and good in the eyes of God. I hope all these crucial points may become principles, especially to you young people. Learn to say, Lord, have mercy upon me, that I would not do things right in my own eyes. Lord, help me to do things which are good and right in the eyes of God. We all have to learn this. Learn not to say, I feel good. Learn not to say, to me, that's okay. Don't say that. Don't say to me. Don't say to you. How about to the Lord? You say to you, it's okay, but how about to the Lord? The Lord would say, no, that is a center. That is a worship place of the idols. I hope that we all can see this. To fear God, not to do things right in our own eyes, but to do things right and good in the eyes of God. Another point, listen this. Why God requires this? Why God gives such a demand? A few reasons. Number one reason, is that we should not abuse God's grace. And the grace here is just Christ. Sorry to say, many Christians are not clear about this picture here. Here you have the good land, right? The good land, flowing with milk and honey, producing all kinds of good things. Among all those good things, you have the top portion, which should be separated unto God as the first tenth. And this is called the tithes, right? The tithes, the first tenth of the good produce should be separated unto God. And this is the top portion, and this is called the tithes. And not only so, you have also the firstborns of the flocks, the sheep. And you have the firstborn of the herds, the cows, the oxen, right? So all the firstborns of the cattle should be kept for God. You have no right to eat by yourself. You have no right to eat them according to yourself. You must set apart the top 1/10. You must set apart all the firstborns of the cattle. Not only so, sometimes you have a vow made. You made a vow. And sometimes you have a free will offering. Of course, when you make a vow, you would not offer the inferior things to God. Surely you will offer the superior part of the things, right? When you will offer a free will, you will always offer the best. So you can see the top 1/10, the tithes was on the top, and all the firstborns of the cattle were the good ones, the best ones, and something you vowed to God, and something you feel will offers to God. All the things, I tell you, should be the top things. All these top things, listen, should not be enjoyed at any place you choose. Even your home, you have no right to enjoy. You must bring all the things to the place where God chooses to put His name there and to make that place His habitation. In other words, you must go to the house of God with all these top portions of the good produce, of the rich produce of the good land. And this means what? This means God doesn't let you abuse the grace. You have no right to use, to enjoy all these top portions according to your likes or dislikes. You have no right to abuse them. You must enjoy them according to God's strict regulation. You have to bring them all to the place where God put His name there. And where is God's habitation? You have no choice. I tell you, these days, we surely all have some amount of experiences along this line. You check with yourself. You check with yourself. Sometimes, no need to say you were unhappy with others, so you didn't like to come to the meeting. I don't like to say that. Sometimes, even when you were tired, you were somewhat bored, so you didn't like to come to the meeting. Am I right? So you didn't come, and you stayed home. Yet, when you stayed home, you still tried to enjoy the top portion of Christ. Didn't you? Be honest. Didn't you? You still tried. Am I right? I tried many times. We all experienced. Whenever we tried that, we didn't get anything. We didn't get anything. We can pray home. And we can parade home. And we can fellowship with the Lord in our home. That's okay. But try to enjoy the top portion of Christ. The firstborn, the vow offering, the free will offering. I tell you, we all have tried, I believe. Not one among us had ever enjoyed such a thing. Am I right? There is a kind of a regulation. God does allow us to abuse His grace. If you are going to enjoy the top portion of Christ, you have to go to the house of God. You have to go to the place God has chosen. It should not be according to your choice. It should not be according to your preference. It has to be according to His choice. You and I, we all have to be subdued. He doesn't allow us to abuse His grace. The number one, listen. The main purpose you have to see, to go to the place is, I would say, the top dealing in our life. The Lord's top dealing. His dealing to the uttermost is to charge us to go to the place. I do believe not only you young ones, even the older ones, sometimes, even oftentimes, we don't feel so good with some other brothers. Probably Milton, he is now enjoying his Anaheim honeymoon. I don't think he can stay here for another 2 months. Still, he will have a honeymoon. Probably after another 2 weeks, he will have a vinegar moon. So by that time, Milton will feel quite bad in some days with wrong. Today, they two are very good. But I just predict maybe after a couple of weeks, Milton will feel not so good. Or Ron will not feel so good with Milton. So what? I tell you. So tonight, they are sitting together. Shoulder, rub shoulder. But when that day comes, Milton sits in the front, Ron would sit at the back. You know the story. And I know the story also. Sometimes you cannot avoid coming to the meeting, but you sure don't like to see certain faces. Or certain faces. So you like to sit at the rear, at some corner. Not only you young ones, even the older ones, the same. Probably sometimes Francis just doesn't like to see Brother Lee. So he says in some corner. I tell you, no need to say, when you don't come to the meeting, you miss the top portion. I tell you, even when you come and sit in the corner, avoiding to see certain face, I tell you, you don't have the enjoyment of the top portion. You have to be subdued. Whether you are wrong, whether you are right, anyhow, you have to be subdued. You have to say, Lord, have mercy upon me, that I may get through with my brother. I like to see his face. I just like to see his face. I like to have no problem with him. I don't like to have the honeymoon, neither the vinegar moon. No moon. But I have the sun. That's Christ. We have to be subdued. Many times I was thinking, suppose in the ancient days, come on, Tom, come on. You come on. Some time ago, I illustrated, among the Israel, two young brothers, young males, they all have to go to Mount Zion 3 times a year, right? And they are cousins. We all know to be cousins, it's hard to be so long, right? Just to be 1 month cousin, that'd be okay. More than 1 month, it's hard. They two get in trouble. And this one doesn't like that one. And that one doesn't like this one. But the time of the Feast of Tabernacle is coming. And they all have to go to that mountain. And that mountain is the chosen place of God. They all have to go. Listen, if they don't go according to the statutes, they have to be cut off from the fellowship of the children of Israel, cut off from the fellowship of the people of God. They have to go. So, no choice. They all go. They all go. This one takes number 1 way. And this one takes number 2 way. They wouldn't go together. They wouldn't go the same way. But eventually, they all hit Mount Zion. At Mount Zion, there is only 1 way. No more another way. So what? So they have to go together. Not only so, according to the Psalms, all those Mount Zion goers, they have to sing Psalm 131. Behold, how good, how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell in division. They have to sing this song. How could they do it? I said, this is Christ subduing. No choice. Subduing. And eventually, the boat got subdued, looked at each other. Then what? It's very good. Oh, behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell in unity. But today, the situation in Christianity is different. I feel I don't like to see friends here. I just don't like to see. As long as he is in this church, I will never come to the church. A lot of churches where there's no friends involved. I can go around to choose a place that fits in my appetite. You see, today in Christianity, there's no subduing. Number 3, I tell you, not abusing God's grace, but being fully subdued. Eventually what? Eventually, the result is to keep oneness. This one place chosen by God, that we may not abusing God's grace, and that we have to be subdued. Regardless what kind of temper you have, regardless what kind of disposition you were born of, regardless what character you have, regardless what, I tell you, you have to be subdued. No choice. Or you just commit suicide. You just cut off yourself. If you are going to live, and to live among the children of Israel, among God's people, you have to be subdued. You have no choice to abuse God's grace, and you have to be subdued. Eventually what? Eventually, spontaneously, you and I will all keep the oneness. The oneness is kept. The oneness is kept. Now, we come to the point, how to discern the place. How to discern the place. The place that is chosen by God according to His choice. How to discern this? 3 or 4 crucial points. Number 1, the place chosen by God must not have any name but God's name. No other name whatsoever. No other name but God's name. Any place that bears a name other than Jesus Christ, other than God, that is not the place chosen by God. God charges us here in this chapter to destroy all the names, to destroy all the places of all the names, leaving no name to exist there. But the chosen place by God must have the name of God. The very place you have to go is the one that God put His name there. This is why we come together to meet, not in other name, but in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. We come together to meet in His name. Even Matthew 18 says, we come to meet into His name. Not only in His name, we come to meet into His name. Every time when we come together, we come into His name. No other name. Methodist, Episcopalian, Presbyterian, Lutheran, no other name. Baptist, no other name. I tell you, all the names have to be destroyed. Number 1. Number 2, that place must be God's habitation, God's dwelling place. This is somewhat hard for us to explain and for us to understand. Let me check with you. Today, what is God's dwelling place? This building? No. Then what? Here, you need Ephesians 2:22. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 22 tells us God's habitation today is in our spirit. So you have to see the very place God chooses is our spirit. To discern which or what is God's chosen place. Number one, you have to discern the place by the name. Then number two, you have to discern the place by the human spirit. The place must be the place with God's habitation. And today, God's habitation is just in our spirit. Suppose here we have a lot of arguments. None of us knows anything about our spirit. But we all know how to argue. We all know how to exercise our mind. We all know how to be emotional. And we all know how to be strong in our will. I tell you, suppose we have a group of people in this way, knowing the mind, knowing the emotion, knowing the will. They're very strong in the will, and they're very emotional, and they're very thoughtful in their mentality. They don't know a bit about their spirit in which God dwells. I tell you, if this is the case, it is hard to say that this is the place God chooses. The place that God has chosen must be the place in the Spirit. This is why many times we have made it so clear that in the church life there's no opinion. There's no opinion. You see, we all have to exercise our spirit. It has to be a matter altogether, absolutely in our spirit. You have to go to the place, the Lord says, where I put my name to. Not only so, and also you have to go to my habitation. Where is God's habitation? In our spirit. Number three, the place which God has chosen is a place full of enjoyment. In this chapter 12, this word eat, E-A-T, eat, has been used a few times. You have to eat your tithes, your firstborns, your top portion, the sacrifices for your vows, for your free wills, all these. You have to eat there at the place which the Lord your God chooses. I tell you, if you come to a place, there's no enjoyment. You have to raise up a question. You have to put a question mark. Is this the place God chooses? If it is, why there is no enjoyment? Where are the riches of Christ? Where are the riches of Christ? Where are the rich produce of the good land? If this is really Zion, if this is really Jerusalem, am I right? At the gathering time, It should be full of what? Full of the rich produce of the good land. We all have to learn how to discern. Number 4, the word rejoice always is used with the word eat. Eat the first fruits, then you rejoice. You have to realize to rejoice is not just to be happy. To be happy maybe silently. But to rejoice could never be silently. Right? You had to make some noise. But in order to rejoice, so you make some noise. This is a kind of performing. This is a kind of performance. This is false. But the house of God, whenever His people are gathered together, must be a place of rejoicing. Not only a place of joy, but a place of rejoicing. Actually, I tell you, to discern a church, a proper church, a genuine church, mainly is by these 4 things. The unique name. The unique name. And the place where the human spirit is prevailing. And the place where the riches of Christ are for our enjoyment. And the place where we just can rejoice. We have the riches for our enjoyment spontaneously. We all will be filled with joy. Then we rejoice. If you ask me, what is the church life? I tell you, this is the church life. To have only the Lord's name and to exercise our spirit, making our spirit so prevailing on top of all other functions, on top of all other faculties, just the spirit. And to enjoy all the riches of Christ, that we may rejoice in Him. I tell you, this is the place that God chooses. And this is the unique place of God's choice for keeping oneness. Sorry, I never thought I could occupy you so long. Now, I turn this to you. Sure, you have seen we have finished probably 40%. We haven't finished 40%, 60% still left untouched. So come back tomorrow morning for the other 60%. Now, anyhow, I still like to hear something out of your mouth to strengthen this kind of message. Please do it.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media or visit our website for more from Living Stream Ministry.